was time for another sacrifice in the town of Mohawk. We all stood outside of the house, listening to the sounds of wood breaking, chains rattling, of screams filling the air. The whole town was watching, as we do when it's time for sacrifice, harvesting the souls of another new family. I watched my parents look at the house with smiles on their faces. They always warned me not to make friends with any of the new kids in town. They wouldn't be around for long, they'd explain. And then we'd gather, lock the doors from the outside, bar the windows, and release the monster and watch. Tradition, they called it. A tradition that kept the rest of us safe. That and the devices on our belts. Everyone in town had them. They made sure that the monster knew not to attack us. They kept us alive, my parents explained. And if I ever lost mine, I wouldn't survive the night. We watched and listened, and everyone smiled. Everyone enjoyed the sacrifice. Everyone but me. I had seen this too many times. I'd watched the blood spray against the window, knowing that in the morning we would be wiping it away, painting over the stains, pretending that it never happened. I couldn't take it. It made me sick. The bloodshed, the gore, their smiles, even the smiles of my parents. I couldn't do this anymore. So I ran into the woods. Some of the town watched as I did, but most kept their eyes on the house as the sacrifice continued. I kept running until I couldn't hear the screams. And then I ran some more. I ran and I ran in the dark woods until I hit something. A door. A door covered in symbols and locks. Why was there just a door in the woods? Then, a voice rang out from behind me. A woman's voice. "Don't be scared," she said. I looked around and saw her. She was wearing a mask with black, dead eyes and drawn-in smile that evoked fear. "Don't be scared," she said again. "Fear is weakness, and we're not weak, are we?" My body trembled as she said those words. Who was she? And why was she wearing a mask? In her hands was a book, an old book. As I stared at it, my vision blurred. Then she looked up and said, Brute, come out of your hole and beat the living black as coal." The lock fell off the door. It slowly swung open, and then a massive creature, the brute, shot out of the door and quickly made its way to the sacrifice. I had to warn them. I had to tell them that something was coming. As I ran behind the brute, she called out, "Fear is weakness." My legs carried me back to the sacrifice, but the brute was nowhere to be seen. I was panting, trying to catch my breath, trying to warn someone when suddenly it leapt from a tree onto one of the townspeople. My neighbor. It sank down and bit his neck. Blood sprayed everywhere. He gurgled loudly. The townspeople jumped back as the brute got to its feet. It started to move forward, but suddenly a chain wrapped around its neck and pulled it back. There she was. The little girl. Estelle, as we called her. I had only seen her through the windows when we performed the sacrifice. Estelle had a bandage around her eyes, and yet she knew exactly where to send her chains. The brute howled as she wrapped another set of chains around its arms. Everyone clutched the devices on their hips, the blinking lights telling them that they were safe. Estelle sent another chain around the brute's ankles and brought it down to the ground. Everyone was smiling again. Another sacrifice. Estelle pulled the brute towards her, tightening the chain around its neck. It was then that I saw the woman from the woods, watching. She didn't look worried. The brute suddenly bit into one of the chains and it broke apart in its teeth. It snapped at another and another, and was suddenly free. The brute tore off her arm. She didn't shriek. She didn't yell. She rolled back and held out her shoulder where her arm had been. Bandages moved out of the wound and formed a new arm. she sent chains through the brute. The beast screamed and swiped with its vicious claws. She sent more chains at the brute, wrapping around its arms, squeezing tightly. I heard bones break. The brute howled again and bit the chains, breaking them, and then body slamming the girl into the house. She broke through the door, smashing it to pieces. The monster followed, and from the outside we heard the sounds of the fight. Chains cutting through flesh, teeth breaking chains, howling, tearing. The townspeople smiled and watched. A second sacrifice. Estelle walked out with the brute wrapped in chains. It was covered in its own blood, writhing and in pain. Defeated. The townspeople beamed, but I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at the woman from the woods who was standing behind everyone. I was watching her pull out some sort of box from her pocket. Something with a button. She tapped it. All the lights on all the devices that all the townspeople were wearing suddenly stopped blinking. They were off. "Another successful sacrifice!" one of the townsfolk started to say, but suddenly a chain wrapped around his neck and pulled tight. He started to choke, and then the chain pulled harder and snapped his neck. The townspeople started to scream as the girl sent chains out, tearing into them. Chains flew everywhere, left and right. People were running in all directions, but anytime the girl turned to me, the masked woman would whisper, "No, just the others." I saw one person start to make it for safety, but suddenly, the brute leapt onto them, bit into their back. Then it turned to another, and took a chunk out of them. The brute and the little girl together attacked every single person from the town, covering the ground in their bodies. Finally, it was just us, the brute, Estelle, the masked woman from the woods, and me. We were the only ones standing. The masked woman walked over to the girl and said, "You're finally free. You may come with me if you wish." And the girl nodded. They turned, and the door had suddenly appeared here, in front of us. It opened on its own, and as they started to walk through, I stood there, shaking, unable to process what I had just witnessed. But maybe it was all the sacrifices from before, or the fear of never knowing, but I managed to ask, "How?" The masked woman turned as the girl and the brute disappeared into the door. "How?" she returned. I pointed to the small box she had held up, the one that had turned off all the security devices. No one outside of our town even knew about them. "Oh," she said. She tapped her book. "Someone gave this to me when I was scared. When I was feeling weak. I don't feel either of those things anymore. I've got one more hunt to do, and then I'll be finished. So if you see a woman with one arm, tell her I'll be returning her book soon." She smiled, and the door closed.
Watch new vids every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, only on Crypt TV.